Test cricket match. Opening bowler Alfred Shaw, opening batsman Arthur Shrewsbury and captain James Lillywhite. The 1888 Lions squad then, made up of 17 English, 4 Scots and 1 Welshman and a Northern Irishman, took a 46-day boat trip to New Zealand before heading to Australia. The Lions weren't alone on the boat. Also on board were 300 stoats and weasels, who were brought over to eliminate New Zealand's rabbit problem. The first ever Lions captain, Robert Seddon, died of drowning midway through the tour while sculling on a river. Andrew Stoddart, who was another of the cricketers there, took over and was the star of the tour. The next one was the first to get official recognition from the RFU against the newly formed Springboks. Although the Lions won the series and beat the Boks again 5 years later, in the 12 series since in South Africa, they've only won 2. New Zealand has proved an even tougher hunting ground, just the 1 series win for the Lions in 11 attempts, which came in 1971. And then there was that nail-shredding drawn series in 2017, only the second in Lions history. Only once have the Lions clinched a series after losing the first test, 1989, when David Campese's infamous ghost pass was pounced upon by Ian Evans. Before World War II, the Lions had a dark blue strip, which on the 1930 tour forced the All Blacks to play in all white. So in 1950, the iconic red shirts, white shorts and blue and green socks combination was born. It remains the symbol of the greatest alliance of adversaries in all of sport. To borrow the phrase from Jim Telfer, the Lions is Everest.
Good morning, welcome along to Sunday Edition with myself, Shaun, Custis and Henry Winder. So many talking points this week. To have VAR or not to have VAR, that is the question after Chris Kavanagh's shocker in the Villa v Newcastle match. And talking of shockers, Thomas Frank had one at Spurs and has been replaced by a Tudor. Can Igor save Tottenham from the relegation trapdoor? Did Sir Jim Ratcliffe have a shocker too with his midweek interview in which the Man United co-owner said the UK has been colonised by immigrants? And of course, England had a shocker in the rugby as well. Also, was it right to give Thomas Tuchel a new 2-year deal as England boss? This morning we want to hear from you on all the main talking points from the weekend. Text us on 81089 or send us a WhatsApp on 03717 223344. We're live on YouTube and your smart TV. Just search talksport.com/watch for more details. This is Sunday Edition on TalkSport. A day late, Henry, but happy Valentine's Day.
Good morning. Well, 2 days late for you because you
2 days late for me. Yes.
On Friday the 13th.
Yes, we
explain.
Well, get it. I hesitate to say out the way on Friday night because
you got it out the way.
There was a lot of sport on Saturday, and plus, Kim, my missus, was off to see Strictly Come Dancing, so she was doing her bit, going off to see what she wanted to do, and I wanted to stay and watch lots of sport.
And what time would she have got back from Strictly?
I don't know, 7-ish, maybe.
So you can eat after...
You can, but Newcastle were on, obviously, on the telly.
So what time would that have finished?
Well, time they got through...
VAR.
Well, no, non-VAR. 8:15, 8 o'clock. Good Winter Olympics on. Liverpool
You love the Winter
playing.
Olympics, don't you?
I do. I love the Winter Olympics. Liverpool were playing, and the Winter Olympics was on. But you went out on Valentine's night.
I did on the official Valentine's night. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I was staying in the flat, North London, and went into the local pub, famous local pub
with Mrs. Winter.
With Mrs. Winter, yeah, and in it was packed with screens everywhere, all showing the Liverpool game, which I obviously wanted to watch. And there were these booths which were basically, you could get 4 people in there, but there were a lot of couples in there. So lager in one hand, red rose in the other, and the men similar. And it was a great pub, great atmosphere. But in these booths, there was a screen at each end. So you could actually focus on the game, and it was a perfect romantic evening.
So Mrs. Winter could see the football as well. I'm sure she was delighted about that.
Delighted. Absolutely delighted. Anyway.
Henry, you are the man, I've said this before, who after afternoon tea at the Ritz, was it?
Yes.
Left Cat Windsor to go home on the train while you went off to Millwall in the FA Cup?
Yeah. That was a wedding anniversary. Yeah.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, and Danny Shitu scored. And it was 1-0, and it was against Aston Villa Friday night. It was amazing.
But how was the afternoon tea?
It was lunch. It was a very nice.
Lunch.
Yeah, it was good lunch.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can actually juggle these two things.
Yes, but then you sent your wife back home on her own while you went off to Millwall. Anyway,
she didn't want to do the quotes.
Let's have a look at the back pages and the front pages of the pullouts. Lots of very good picks from the rugby, aren't there?
Well, as ever, I mean, the quality of sports photography in this country is exceptional. And again, exemplified here, Ross Parker, his picture of an absolutely crushed-looking England at Murrayfield, grand slammed on the front page of the Sunday Telegraph's pullout. England's hopes of the Six Nations Grand Slam ended by rejuvenated Scotland. And look, we've had this discussion on here before about England talking in advance, and we see a lot in football, but England talking in advance to the rugby players about, it's all going to come down to that game against France at the end. It's a broadcaster's dream. England are going to go to Stade de France and win. What a game that will be. And a lot of people were saying, by the way, they've got to go to Murrayfield first. The risk of sounding like Kevin Keegan. They've got to go to Murrayfield and get a result. And they didn't. And the Scots were absolutely fantastic.
Well, Kieran Bracken, when he was on this programme last week, was looking forward to us giving Gregor Townsend a bloody nose because he felt a lot of the English experts felt he'd made a mistake by taking on this consultancy role with Newcastle Red Bulls, and that he'd sort of divided his attention, if you like, and this was his perfect answer.
And so you're bringing it back to Newcastle. Is Newcastle what won it?
It's amazing. No, I mean, look, you can't spend, I don't know how long Arundel was off the pitch, wasn't it?
Well, it was 20 minutes, technically. I mean, it was two yellows.
Plus earlier as well. So
did you understand the rules around how long you went off for 2 yellows? Why 2 yellows don't equal
He'd already gone off earlier, hadn't he? And then he went off for the red as well. So I think it was maybe up to half an hour they spent with 14 men.
Right.
But then you could bring on a replacement for the man who was sent off, but it couldn't be him after the 20 minutes. Anyway.
Confusing. One thing about the rugby, which I really do enjoy, and I know we'll get into this debate on VAR, the comms, I think, in rugby, the fact that you can hear the thought process and what they're saying as live, rather than waiting, a week for Howard Webb in football to come on mic'd up, I thought was interesting.
You may have noticed that in the short track skating last night, Henry, if you were paying attention, because that man who was on the comms was a very busy fella every time somebody crashed.
So you were watching the short track skating on Valentine's night? Romance isn't dead in where?
Flicking back and forwards. Yes.
It was good. Right. The Winter Games has been exceptional.
It has. Glad to hear you're taking interest in something other than football. Meanwhile, back to the football, Frankie Spanky on the back of the Sun.
Yeah, Martin Lipton, who knows Tottenham well, your chief sports writer, isn't he? Yes. Back page of the Sun, Spurs dig at ex-boss. And this is the statement that Tottenham came out with when they confirmed Igor Tudor as their interim boss. And Martin writes, Tottenham Hotspur confirmed Igor Tudor as their interim boss as club chiefs took a swipe at sacked Thomas Frank. Basically saying that, in the statement, just to quote Martin writing the statement, writing about the statement, his mandate is straightforward. This is the club talking for Igor Tudor. Bring intensity, organisation and a competitive edge to the squad at a decisive stage of the campaign. which implies that intensity, organisation and a competitive edge weren't there before. So I think it's a little bit harsh on Thomas Frank. They could actually have highlighted the fact that there were a lot of injuries as well.
But
I think they could have been a little bit more respectful.
Two things.
Thomas Frank.
Be honest. Had you heard of Igor Tudor? Were you across his work?
Of course, yeah. I mean, I covered actually probably one of the worst games I've ever seen was the 2003 Champions League final in which he played and went off with a thigh strain just before half-time. Juve against AC Milan. I think it was at Old Trafford. And it was just the worst game. Went to penalties eventually. But yeah, of course, yeah. I've covered his teams at Juventus and... I mean, he played against England in 2004. So in the 4-2 game, the Wayne Rooney game. Yeah.
So I read. I don't remember him particularly from that game, but I remember.
Yeah.
I was at the game.
Yeah, you were.
And I was at the game on Tuesday night, and I have to say, I was not surprised that Frank went the next day. There was no way he could keep going through that. I mean, it was pretty lively.
The fans voted with their feet, then they voted with the protest against him. And, you know, maybe, I mean, look, we all know he is a good manager, but stepping up, he just didn't appreciate, I don't think, looking at it from the outside, the scale of Tottenham Hotspur.
No, I think you're probably right there. Sunday Mirror actually features Mansfield, who beat Burnley away. Lou Reed scoring, made it a perfect day.
Very good,
I would say. One for older listeners.
One for the kids, yeah.
But I mean, a great triumph by them. But Scott Parker kind of shot himself in the foot.
Well, he did. Was it 8-9 changes or so? I mean, that was risky. Given that Burnley are likely to go down, what have they got to play for? What have the fans got to sort of cling on to hope for in the season? And the FA Cup, and they went out to League One Mansfield. I mean, you know, to fantastic goals. And Nigel Calf, you know, what a story that is. Gives you millions of stag party headlines, and what a goal. I mean, I think it's Lewis Reed, but you can have Lou Reed if you want. Secured victory with I'm just reading the back of the Sunday Express, with a 30-yard free kick. Did you see it? It was a fantastic free kick.
Absolute belter.
Yeah, so it was good.
I read with interest in the back page of the Sunday Mirror that Mansfield's first-team coach is a guy called Andy Garner. If it's the same fella, and I think it might be, you will not remember him for Derby County, but when I used to cover Derby County, he was kind of a star of Derby County reserves and scored an amazing 4-1 win against Man United reserves at Old Trafford in 1985, I think it might have been, and it was a fantastic night. We were celebrating on the coach back.
You were on the coach, were you?
I was,
with
yeah.
the team?
You would travel with the reserves. You know, at the olden days, when you were on a local paper, you would travel certainly with the reserve side.
Yeah.
And that was a great night. 1-4-1.
You look back very fondly to those days, didn't you?
I do.
Really?
I think it was great.
Well, because of the access.
Yeah, and great grounding in journalism.
Yeah, I get that. But did it temper your ability to criticise the team if they just say, actually...
Roy McFarland, who was the reserve team coach at the time, used to tell me off all the time for my reports.
What player he was, by the way.
Oh, yeah. You couldn't criticise them for a 4-1 win at Man United reserves, though, I've got to say.
Not even you.
And also on the back pages is the VAR storm, which we are going to talk about in detail after the break. But just quickly...
It's a shocker. Wayne Rooney on TV slams the officials after farce at Aston Villa without VAR, and he is particularly picking up on the Lucas Digne, the handball. He is 3 or 4 yards inside, says pundit Wayne Rooney. He fumed.
Shambles.
And he says, that decision is one of the worst I've seen because at no stage was Digne out of the penalty box. I actually didn't think it was the worst decision on the night involving Digne. No. I thought that tackle, that challenge was...
Well, we'll get into them all after the break. So coming up next on Sunday Edition, we'll look at all of yesterday's FA Cup action, and we'll also give our reflections on Sir Jim Ratcliffe's controversial comments that have been top of the news agenda all week.
Thomas Tuchel signing a contract, is it because of the fact that the FA were concerned he was going to go somewhere else?
Listen, I think it is. You know, I certainly think he was on Manchester United's list. Who knows? Maybe he would have been on Tottenham's list as well. And I think that's why they had to get this done, because what you don't want, if you're the FA, and if you're an England fan, you don't want Thomas Tuchel going into the World Cup with constant speculation that he could be leaving for a Premier League club job at the end of the tournament. I think getting that out of the way, he can focus on the job in hand. I don't think England will win the World Cup. I think there's a lot that counts against England winning this World Cup.
What happens if we lose in the quarterfinals? Does he continue as England manager?
I think I don't think we should underestimate if he gets to the quarterfinal of a World Cup. When you go back pre-Gareth Southgate, which is your argument, we'd have bitten your hand off at the quarterfinal of a World Cup.
Are you going to defend me on that?
No, I'll defend you because I think Gareth Southgate should have won a European Championship. I think they should have beaten Italy in that final. However, pre-Gareth Southgate, England didn't get to quarterfinals and finals of European Championships. So I don't, and it's a tough draw, by the way. You talk about draws. I was there when the draw was made in Washington. England have got to take out some big hitters to get to a quarterfinal.
So where does he have to get to keep his job done?
I think the quarterfinal is par. I think. We're with you till 11 o'clock here on Sunday edition, where we're now focusing on Newcastle's 3-1 FA Cup fourth round win at Villa, which was full of controversy, with the VAR once again the big talking point, even though it wasn't even in use. Because that's for this season and the previous FA Cup campaign, VAR's not been used until the fifth round because lower league clubs don't have the facilities to put it in, apparently.
Sorry, do you agree with that? Don't you think the rule should actually be the same throughout the whole tournament?
Yeah, so not have VAR for the whole tournament or have it for the whole tournament, but it was very difficult to do it in the non-league grounds.
I get that. So you then don't have it for the whole competition?
Yeah, probably. But given the mess we were in yesterday, it may be...
A good day for VAR?
No, a bad day for referees who can't make easy decisions. Because Chris Kavanagh may have been wishing he'd had VAR to fall back on. Tamir Abraham's opener, miles offside. Lucas Digne's handball, easily in the penalty area.
Lucas Digne's
tackle, easily a red card. And it was an evening that left both managers feeling frustrated.
Great advert for VAR, I think. We were hoping that VAR suddenly was recalled. I mean, I've been an advocate for referees making more decisions and be less reliant on technology, and then you feel today and you think, do you know what, I wish we had it back the other way. I think it's uncharacteristic performance from the officials. I think usually, we've been praising officials this season generally, but that was a step back. It was not intentional. I just think that was the way the game went, and every decision seemed to be against us. I thought the players did really well to keep their cool and to not allow that to disrupt our performance level.
What was your view on the red card? Were you disappointed with your goalkeeper?
Marco, he was playing a fantastic game. As an experience to improve for the next weeks, matches, or months, or years even. But not only the action of the goalkeeper, because as well when Leo he was with the ball, maybe try to play one sure pass or maybe play with the supporters out of the field.
Anyway, it was a difficult evening for Mr. Kavanagh, and a lot of points have been made. Like, referees have got so used to VAR being a great backup that they don't actually need to make a super decisive decision at the time, because they always think, oh, well, you can overrule it if I've got it a bit wrong. You couldn't do that here. Linesmen have forgotten how to flag for offside instantly because they don't do it normally. And it was a complete and utter shambles. But I was with Alan Shearer when he said, just do your job, because he's in my camp. He's no VAR. You're very VAR, and you were probably buoyed by
not really
being great for VAR. Eddie Howe's been against VAR as well, and as he heard there, Sounds like you're starting to change his mind again.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you want is fairness, you want accuracy, you want speed. You don't want injustice like a hand of God. You don't want injustice like a Thierry Henry. I think we were both in there, certainly in there in 2009 when Thierry Henry's double handball against the Irish denied them a chance of getting to the World Cup. I think what we... those of us who do understand the need for technology, 21st century, unlike people like you, would just say it has to be a lighter touch. And I think if you look this season at, and in fairness to VAR, we do have in the Premier League the lowest intervention rate of all them, sort of the major European teams.
Do we? Where does that stat come from?
Well, it's a stat that you see. You hear it on talkSPORT. You see it on in newspapers. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's but that's the way it should be, because it should be minimal interference.
It doesn't feel like that, does it?
No, I absolutely agree with you. And maybe that's because we're focusing on every incident. I mean, it wasn't simply at Villa Park yesterday. Omar Marmoush ran through at 1-0 for City against Salford, scored a good goal, and he was ruled offside. And he clearly wasn't. So I agree with you in terms of what you're saying, and you're completely right, and you're backing up VAR in terms of... They are the officials. First thing is, it's not a great generation of officials. I think they're spread too thinly because they're all having to do sort of different jobs. We need to invest even more in grassroots and in developing. And I also think in getting more professionals involved. Farai Halam, who did the Chelsea game the other night, was outstanding by all the reports. Former player, I think it was Stevenage. So I'm surprised that PGMO don't look more at kids who don't make it necessarily at academies, who trying to get their first contract, it doesn't work out, but they have a feel for the game and actually maybe accelerate. They are accelerating some of their development into sort of specialist VARs and into general officialdom, but get more of them involved. We have to improve the standards, but we can't use VAR to forensically examine everything.
As Newcastle the other night, we were hanging around for about 4 minutes. If you were in the stadium, you didn't know what on earth was going on. And he was offside by what? A hair or a pimple on his forehead?
Yeah, but you're not a believer in having a time limit on VAR.
No, I'm just not a believer in having VAR. That's it. I don't want to put time. I don't want appeals.
But what
either.
happened yesterday? Doesn't that confirm?
Can you imagine if you had appeals as well? Do you know they are arguing for this? Well, you'd quickly have a look at the iPad. Think, right, we'll appeal that, if you're very fast. And then they say, no, we've turned down your appeal. But you can't. Look, I've looked on the iPad. It's very messy. I don't see how you can do that either.
Yeah, I mean, the appeal system, I can see why some people will push that. I think there should be a time limit on it. If it's not clear and obvious within, I don't know, I keep coming up with different figures, say 90 seconds, 2 minutes, 4 minutes to decide whether something's clear and obvious. It's a joke.
Talking of clear and obvious... Sir Jim Ratcliffe was very clear and obvious in his comments during the week, and it caused quite a stir when he said that the UK has been colonised by immigrants. Now, he was doing a business interview, but as the co-owner of one of the biggest clubs in the world, if not in some people's eyes the biggest club in the world, you do get the feeling he should think about that as well. Manchester United has a very diverse team, a very diverse supporter base, and there are ways of phrasing your opinion which isn't that. And you got yourself into a bit of hot water because you tweeted he's got every right to his opinion, and people didn't like the fact you thought you should have an opinion.
Well, at first I don't think you can... I mean, if he wants his opinion... but the fact is that I disagree with it. The fact that I wrote, I mean, it was interesting, but it's
the way
like
it's the manner of it. It's just
I mean, that piece that I wrote, I mean, it had more than 1 million views of people, but at least, but actually the abuse was both ways. It was, you're being too harsh on Jim Ratcliffe and you're being too soft on Jim Ratcliffe. The piece was very excoriating about him and how he should have apologised. And how would a player like Cobby Mainu, an England international, Stockport born, whose father came over from Ghana, how would Jim, and that was what the piece was a lot of it about, which you obviously didn't read, and that it was important that Jim Ratcliffe actually appreciated that. There was also an extra issue on he was talking about people on benefits. Well, I'm sure 1 or 2 people in Manchester on benefits because he'd laid them off. He was responsible for that, as well as everyone's rightly pointing out, the hypocrisy of someone who, in a way, you could argue he was an economic migrant, the fact that he is now living in Monaco. So I thought his comments, and I said it,
and the fact he got his stats wrong.
And he got his stats wrong as well, which is a bit worrying for a money man, a businessman. So on many levels, it was offensive, it was divisive, and as the point made very clear, I thought it was an embarrassment to Manchester United.
Yeah, what about the fact the club released this statement? Never mentioned Jim Ratcliffe. Talked about how we pride ourselves on being inclusive and welcoming. So who would have authorised that to put that statement up, but don't mention Sir Jim in it?
Well, his apology came out, and then the statement came out.
So was it an apology?
No, it wasn't. It was
Sorry if some of you didn't like it, but I stand by everything I said.
Yeah. I mean, I did a lot of media, as you can imagine, that day, and, just having to react to the apology, which clearly wasn't an apology. It was him just saying he was a little bit clumsy. It's remarkable how sometimes very intelligent individuals cannot think things through. It's remarkable how people come from outside of football when they've been high profile in their own industry and think that there won't be a similar scrutiny in football. And that is football for you. I knew who Sir Jim Ratcliffe was before he stepped into football, but not particularly. I knew, the fact he'd been involved in a bit of cycling, bit of football in France, and obviously Ineos and all that. But actually, He's got good people around him who should be advising him better.
Just quickly on a wider point, should you be done for bringing football into disrepute if you're speaking, if you like, as a businessman who never actually mentioned Man United once? And I'm not letting them off the hook here by any means, but is it a matter for football, do you think, to get involved?
What, for the Football Association to charge him? I mean, it's an interesting one because the Football Association is supposedly not allowed to bring politics into sport. Otherwise, FIFA will ban us from everything. It is difficult. I mean, look, he's embarrassed Manchester United, and I thought Manchester United fantastically with that statement, very powerful statement, as also did Andy Burnham, Mayor of Manchester, with his statement, just making the point that Manchester has historically been a very welcoming city. So I just thought it was naive, it was wrong, it was divisive, it was offensive, and rightly he's been called out.
Indeed, not the wisest of comments this week from Sir Jim. This is Sunday edition on talkSPORT.
When you walk into Tottenham, what you see everywhere is to dare is to do. It's everywhere. And yet their actions are almost the antithesis of that. Right. It's a real curious in terms of understanding what are they trying to build? What are they? Is it? There's obviously, they've built an unbelievable stadium, unbelievable training facilities. But when you look at the expenditure, particularly, in their wages structure, they're not a big club. I saw that because when we were trying to sign players, we weren't in the market for those players.
I was stunned. I thought it was disgraceful.
Did you?
I thought, honestly.
The Winter Games are well underway in Italy, and you can watch every moment of the Winter Games Milano Cortina 2026 live on TNT Sports and Discovery Plus until February 22. And joining us now to discuss the action from those Winter Games is former bobsleigh pilot Lamin Deen. Lamin, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning, guys.
Good morning, Lamin.
I look with interest, Lamin, that bobsleigh women's monobob is already on. I don't think we had that when you were a racer, did we?
No, we didn't, and it is. It started about 30 minutes ago, and it's on right behind me. I'm keeping a close eye.
Does it? Was it needed? Is it something everybody called for? Because I wasn't even aware it existed, I must admit, but I'm told it was on in the last Olympics too.
It was, and it was to give the ladies another opportunity for a medal, because the men had a 4-man bobsleigh and 2-man bobsleigh, where the ladies only had a one shot at the 2-woman bobsleigh.
Oh, see, right. 2 or 3 realistic medal chances today for Team GB. We've got 2 crews in the mixed team skeleton, and we've got 2023 world champions Hugh Nightingale and Charlotte Banks in snowboard cross mixed team action. Are we going to add to our medal haul, do you think?
Fingers crossed, most definitely. We're all here supporting the guys, and I'm sure they'll go out and, give their best and hopefully bring back some hardware.
Lamin, it's Henry here. I've been looking at your career and your journey through life. It's been absolutely fascinating. And, the elements, obviously, you were in the army. I seem to remember you were calling you would look after people's cars around Main Row back in the day at Manchester City. Adrenaline has obviously been part of your life. Is that a prerequisite to being elite at the Winter Games?
Well, I just want to start. Yes, I used to do this stuff at Main Road, but I am a hardcore Manchester United fan. Right, let's get that clear.
Very confusing.
Yes, for sure. I suppose it is. And, joining the army was what sort of gave me the basis to move on and to start competing in the bobsleigh and the Winter Olympics. But everybody knows the film around bobsleigh, Cool Runnings. It used to be it still is one of my favorite. And through the army, I got an opportunity to go and try out bobsleigh. And before I knew it, I'm on the start line of an Olympic Games.
You chose bobsleigh, but you could have chose skeleton, I suppose. And Matt Weston took us to a gold, and he was absolutely brilliant. Why did you go for bobsleigh over skeleton when we seem so good at skeleton?
Yeah, but also we've had some great success over the years in bobsleigh also, and I from being in the military and working as a team, it was more appealing to me, especially 4-man bobsleigh when you're all working together with the guys, and it's a lot like being in a section or a platoon in the military. So I found comfort in that discipline.
Tell us what you made of Matt Weston's gold, and also the 3 girls who were in the top 9 in the women's skeleton too.
Well, those guys are absolute students of the sport. I remember when they came into the program, and they work really, really hard, and they're all really nice people also. British Skeleton have got a fantastic program, as have bobsleigh, and they're just like a medal machine. They keep churning them out. The 3 girls, 3 of them in the top 10, absolutely fantastic result. They're all debutantes of the Olympic Games. I'm sure next time round they'll be fighting for medals for sure.
You said something fascinating about the similar skills you almost need to be in a bobsleigh team to having been in the army, in terms of what that team ethic,
discipline, and overall teamwork, because it doesn't just work with one individual. You've got 4 guys. This is within the 4-man. You've got 4 guys who were, all working together. If one person, makes a mistake, then, it could be your race over. So you really got to have that team ethos, and that sort of togetherness, and that was what really appealed to me.
There's been some pretty spicy stuff going on off the pitch, if you like, Lamin. First of all, let's have a look at the Canadian curler, Mark Kennedy, who I'm not saying you're an expert in curling, but we've all been glued to this one. The naughty boy seemed to have pushed the stone after he let it go from the handle. And what's the atmosphere like out there about this particular bit of cheating?
Well, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm as you said, I'm not a curling expert, but it's let's just say it looked a bit dodgy. I can't comment on it because I'm not a subject matter expert on it, but it's there's a lot of talk in the camp about it.
No, but there's a lot of talk, and rightly so, because of course he was called out on it again yesterday, and the thing about a Winter Olympics is great watching all the sports, but a little bit of what's going on off the pitch, and there's been plenty of it in this Winter Olympics. There's been lots of talking points, and it adds to the the gaiety of it all, really.
Yeah, yes, it does. Yes, it does, and we had it at the start with the skeleton helmets. And then there's all sort of a lot of conversation, off the field of play as well, and it adds to the interest.
Will we see a spike in interest in these sports and more Brits actually taking up some of these sports?
Hopefully, especially looking at sort of Matt Weston's Olympic gold, but also the snow sports. Especially the younger generation. These sports are really, real cool sports. And if you ever met any of the racers, they're real nice people, real down to earth individuals like me and you. And it's just so inspiring. It's inspiring for me. I work closely with Amy Fuller and a couple of other guys, and they make me just want to grab a snowboard or grab some skis and get out on the slopes.
It was interesting looking at some of the moguls and the freestyle yesterday. When they competed and got to the bottom, they would hug each other. There seems to be a sort of camaraderie. I know Shaun's been focusing on, and Shaun often does, on the sort of the negatives and the sort of the cheating in the curling and all the scandal with his sort of tabloid sports editor's hat on. But actually, there seems to be a lot of camaraderie amongst the athletes out there.
There is, through the snow sports and the sliding sports. Let's not forget that the competitors, they're racing each other week in, week out, year in, year out. So they know each other. Some of them are really, really good friends. And although, when the timer goes, you're rivals, but as soon as you've done your run, you're best of friends again. And let's not forget, you're only, you're in ice sports, you're racing against the track. In snow sports, you do your jumps, do your spins, you land, and it's you against the judges.
Particularly intrigued we have been about why we do so well in skeleton when obviously we don't have a track in this country. I know they have it, I think it's at the University of Bath, is it, where you have a dry type of run there. How is it that we're able to keep producing these athletes who win medals?
Yeah, there's a fantastic facility down at the Uni of Bath where bobsleigh and skeleton train, multi-million-pound facility, so it's great. But I think as Brits, we know we're on a back foot because we haven't got a track, we haven't got our own track. So we just give it that little bit extra. And actually, the programs are designed to get maximum runs. So where other countries maybe will go out a few weeks, a couple of months later out on the ice, we're out there, putting in the pre-season more so in order to catch up. We're always in the catch-up.
There's also the Cresta Run, which obviously the Army's been involved in, the forces have been involved in. It's been very much a sort of British tradition, the Cresta Run, which I assume is on a skeleton-type machine.
So the military has a real rich history in sliding sports, skeleton, which was born from the Cresta Run. And then after came bobsleigh. The Cresta Run is in St. in Switzerland, and it sort of intertwined with the bobsleigh and skeleton track. And the Cresta Run still, till this day, you have a lot of military competitors, but a lot of competitors every year go there and try it out. So, guys, you should get yourself down there and have a go.
I've got friends who've come off at shuttlecock and have hardly recovered. So, having seen the speed at which they go, I'm going to be watching from afar.
Lamin, you touched on the skeleton athlete Vladislav Hereskevich, who basically he was disqualified because he refused their rules because he wanted to wear a helmet with all the athletes who'd been killed in the Ukraine-Russia war. What did you make of that? And is there anything we can do about the rules so that people like him can compete in the future?
I think after this, really sad sort of ending to his Olympic experience, it will definitely be discussed, and it has to be discussed because it's taking the helmet out of it. This is a guy that has worked really, really hard for the last 4-8 years, to live his dream at the Olympic Games, and because of an unfortunate disqualification, he won't get to do that. He has to wait for another 4 years if he chooses to do that. But it definitely needs looking at.
Yeah, it takes a big man though to decide not to take part, doesn't it? And to honour your athletics teammates. It's very impressive, really, to sacrifice that dream as he did. Lamin Deen, thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of the Winter Olympics.
Thanks, guys. You enjoy it too.
Thanks.
And don't forget, you can watch every moment of the Winter Games Milano Cortina 2026 live on TNT Sports and Discovery Plus until Feb 22. This is Sunday Edition on talkSPORT. Next up, it's our Sunday Edition feature, Best of the Best.
Arsenal all his life, and I just want to say that I fear for Arsenal again because I genuinely believe that Mikel Arteta sets out his team not to lose, not to lose, whereas Man City set out to win. And I don't know how you win something by setting out not to lose. And this is a problem we have every year. We get towards the end, and he thinks that by not losing, getting a draw will be all right. But every time you draw now and the other team wins, you drop 2 points in the Premier League. Yep. And so he's got a tried and tested method of failing. And if my reasons for believing that are, first of all, I've never believed he's going to get us over the line after his first full season. If you look back, I believe there was a moment. There was 8 games left to play. Arsenal were in 4th place. We were 5 points clear of the team in 5th, and we had a game in hand, and we still managed to finish 5th. And every season since then has been the same.
That was when you went to Newcastle.
This is Sunday Edition live on talkSPORT, and don't forget, if you want to watch the show, you can. We're live on YouTube or your smart TV, so tune in there if you fancy. Much more to come on the show before we hand over to live commentary of Birmingham v Leeds in the FA Cup 4th round. But now, let's get into this.
One of the greatest tries ever scored, but she won't get there. Kaylee Hodgkinson is the Olympic champion.
I'm going to float like a butterfly and sting like a bee.
Oh, Stephen Harmison, one of the great balls. Double 12! Oh, my word!
Best of the best on Sunday Edition.
I think I'm a special one.
I think he's done it! Yes! You beauty!
Let's be having you!
On talkSPORT.
Yeah, Best of the Best is our weekly feature. Henry and I choose a different topic each week and decide what we think is the best of it. And in the light of biathlon bronze medalist Struleholm Laigreed confessing to cheating on his girlfriend, today we've gone for press conference bombshells from sportsmen.
We've got a meeting tonight, probably to watch the game, to see where we went wrong, which is probably the whole 93 minutes actually. But, you know, as a group of players, we owe it to ourselves and to everyone in the country back home. You know, if we feel as though a problem, there's no point keeping it in, whether, you know, we have an argument with the manager or it upsets him, us expressing our opinions. Everyone needs to get off their chest exactly how they're feeling. And if we feel that, we need to go to him.
When the seagulls follow the trawler, it's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea.
Yeah, a couple of belters there from press conferences which me and Henry attended, and we're trying to stick to ones we've been at, but there are a couple of others which we might throw in there as well. And top of the shop there was John Terry in 2010 in South Africa, and it's one that kind of, well, I don't know, did it take us by surprise? We knew there was a bit of, we knew there was a bit of discontent in the camp, but this really laid it bare, didn't it?
Well, you call it a coup. I mean, the background was June 20th, 2010, after the pretty shocking 0-0 draw against Algeria. John Terry was put up to speak, and he basically said there was a player revolt against Fabio Capello. And if I can read from your report of this historic event, your own report, absolutely, yeah. JT Fury, which, two long words for you, well, and you basically said, England's World Cup camp was in meltdown last night over John Terry. Many players are furious after the former skipper, important point because he'd had the captaincy taken away, claimed that they, the players, were ready to challenge boss Fabio Capello about aspects of his regime, which, to clarify, were about boredom, were about team issues, and why on earth Joe Cole wasn't starting. Players, and this is you again, players and their agents, Shaun never far from agents, rushed to distance themselves from John Terry's comments. Players are angry the Chelsea star named individuals at Friday's impromptu meeting, including Wayne Rooney and Steven Gerrard. They strongly believed he talked out of school.
Well, we know they talked out, that they felt he talked out of school because I know from my experience, I talked to one player who couldn't believe he'd said it. But you could argue, I suppose, that it needed a rocket because England were not playing very, very well. And Terry has a certain way of putting things over which can either galvanise a team or split it. And of course, we know now that in those days, factions did exist between groups of players from various clubs. So the Man United gang, Liverpool gang, the Chelsea gang, and him campaigning for his teammate Joe Cole to be in the team at the expense of whom, for instance, would not go down well with some others.
Yeah, and there was a Chelsea-Liverpool split, I think it's fair to say, as well. But some of the things that he said in terms of, I mean, we went into Rustenburg, into the players' training retreat and hotel, and it was pretty grim.
It was in a fairly desolate place, wasn't it?
Fairly desolate place. There was basically nowhere to go. They were behind wires, and it was, you know, look, they're out there representing their country, but Fabio Capello didn't understand that England players basically need to be entertained between games. He was used to the AC Milan players, Italian players like Maldini and Baresi having a 4-hour coffee, playing chess and talking Verdi, whereas England players needed a little bit more entertaining.
They did have their games, their video games.
It was, well, we went round shortly after they left, and you could see why they got board. And also, they went off on safari one day, and this is something the media sort of had to look at the time. And Joe Cole said afterwards he saw more photographers on safari than he did lions. He didn't even see 3 lions, which was so. But the suggestion is that the players were going to have a meeting that night. They were going to have a beer, and they were going to sort of discuss what the tactics should be, even various set piece things. At which point Fabio Capello intervened, and you can take up the story because Capello was unimpressed.
He was unimpressed. Felt as if he's got anything to say. He said, "My door is always open."
Yeah.
I don't think the players felt that was the case, or if it was, whatever they said just went in one ear and out of the other. He had his way, and that was the way. Question, I suppose, during a tournament like that is, should you publicly be calling out the manager for his tactics and the team he picks?
No.
That's the issue as well.
I mean, my piece in the Telegraph, I said, well, he was a rebel with a cause, because actually I thought some of the things that he was suggesting in terms of...
So you're standing up for
it wasn't. I was just saying that I was standing up for elements of it, slightly more nuanced than your JT Fury.
It was certainly something to behold, and of course the South Africa World Cup ultimately was a bit of a mess, wasn't it? So not particularly fond memories.
Good trip though.
Oh, good trip. Not particularly
Brilliant
fond memories of England's performances there. That package also had Eric Cantona's infamous press conference, which Henry was there, and did you know what he was talking about? And did you think when he said it that it would go down in absolute folklore?
I've interviewed him a couple of times since, and whenever he's reflected on it, that the seagulls following the trawler, you just knew that he's got this brilliant sense of humour, and he was slightly winding up the English media.
Well, we were the seagulls following the trawler. Saying that he's going to toss us some sardines, but he didn't.
No, he didn't, but... I didn't realise at the time quite the extent of his sense of humour and the wry element, and the fact that when he would go into FA disciplinary meetings, he would make the most extraordinary comments, and they would be looking at him, and even the Manchester United lawyer would be looking at him sort of with slightly raised eyebrows. But that was him. Brilliant sense of humour. And I mean, someone actually afterwards asked Manchester United after Cantona's seagull suggestion whether Manchester United were going to send him on loan to Brighton, given that the seagulls connection. So actually, he was making an interesting general point, as well as I think slightly mocking us in terms of we are obsessed with little tidbits from the stars.
Well, we are, but correctly so in Cantona's case. I mean, this was him speaking.
Yeah.
Was it for the first time?
I'd been there that night, and it won't surprise you to know that it was on my wedding anniversary.
Of course.
I was at Selhurst Park that night, and I went in there, and it was a very dramatic night as he leapt into the crowd and triggered an extraordinary sequence of events.
There's actually lots of presses we've been at. I'd love to have another half an hour on this gobsmacking ones, but... Rooney diving, 2014.
Yeah.
Let's pick that one out.
Well, Rooney wasn't diving himself, but he was saying that England had to be more streetwise. And so it was after the Uruguay game when Godin had fouled Sturridge, and Godin was on a Uruguay captain, centre-half, very good player, very skilled player of a lot of nous and not a short amount of gamesmanship. And the suggestion was when Sturridge got fouled by Godin, who was on a yellow, one or two England players said to him, stay down. And so you could get Godin, which is not the English approach. I'm sure the FA
Glenn Hoddle did say Michael Owen. He was happy about him diving.
Yeah. And there was always, I mean, that was Well,
so you could say we'd already learned the art.
And
so
Pochettino, I mean, I went to his first press conference at Southampton, and at the end of it, he said, it's good to be here in the home of fair play, but Michael Owen, 2002 against Argentina, because Pochettino was the centre-half that Michael Owen went round in fairly clever fashion. In terms of Rooney actually just made a very good point in terms of the streetwise element, and you could argue that it's still a debate that's going on.
Crop up that one, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Gareth Southgate wasn't particularly fond of dark arts, I would say, but he was involved in a couple of things. 1997, where there was
Rome.
Pretend injury gate,
which was one of the best press conferences. He's actually a Hoddle press conference as England coach. This was in the lead up to England went out there early. They just needed a draw, the famous draw. They got the 0-0. Ian Wright, sensational up front. Christian Vieri, that header that almost went in, and David Seaman just sort of ushered it past. And anyway, the press conference, Hoddle was there, and Roy Hodgson was Inter Milan coach at the time, and I think he might have been doing television or radio. He turned up to translate for Hoddle for the Italian press. They'd asked him to, and just very quickly, Hoddle was
players were on there.
The players were on there as well, and Hoddle was being fairly limited in his information. He's basically saying that Southgate was injured. So either Southgate or Beckham was injured, and one of them was up there. And but he wouldn't give away what the injury was. So the Italians turned to Roy Hodgson, the Italian journalists turned to Roy Hodgson, asking for the translation of what Hoddle was saying, and he basically translated it as Glenn Hoddle wouldn't say what Southgate's injury was. At which point he then tapped his thigh to indicate what Southgate's injury was, and I think he was fine. They both played, didn't they? Him and Beckham.
I think they did. There's various instances, as we say, of gobsmacking press conferences. Mo Salah would be the most recent example, really, at Elland Road. But we weren't at it. Does it count?
Well, I mean, it still went ahead. So yes, it does. It doesn't have to have your involvement to be a full.
That was a back page day to beat them all. That one wasn't it?
Yeah, but then look at Mo Salah last night. I mean, it's amazing how things turn around. I was really doubting whether he could stay on and whether the Saudis would come in for him during the window. He may well go in the summer, but he, scored one, assisted one yesterday, and got a standing ovation from the Liverpool fans.
Oh, so he'll be staying then?
I don't know. Well, I mean, I'm sure there'll be movement in the summer.
Yes, there probably will. Next up, the Six Nations second weekend was lively with a shock defeat for England and Ireland surviving the scare against Italy.
The irony is, I think Arteta is one of the best managers to grace the Premier League for a long time. I think if anyone can, and I just think we just need to play.
Sorry, say that again. What did you say? Just say that Arteta's one of the greatest managers to ever come into the Premier League.
Yeah, can you not hear this evening?
But what are you on about? He ain't won that. He ain't won nothing.
No, but he's a young manager. Wenger came second 3 years on the trot, and then he won the league. You got to give these guys time, and I think
you just said you've been found out.
Yeah.
So sorry. Do you say that Arteta's one of the greatest managers to grace the Premier League, or recent? I missed what you said. What did you say?
I said Arteta is one of the best managers. Yep. He's come into a club.
Yeah.
I don't know which one of you are talking, but one of you's a Tottenham fan.
No, go on. But I want to know what you said.
He's come into the club. He's changed the culture of the club.
Would you give up the chance to play for your country, to become a global star of your sport and earn big money doing it? Well, that's the choice facing rugby players right now because of the proposed new R360 League. Led by 2003 World Cup winner Mike Tindall, it's already being backed by major investors. Its goal? Turn rugby union into franchises, not clubs, add some serious cash and a bit of razzmatazz. Or in their words, make the game more watchable, accessible and entertaining, especially for younger audiences. But there's been a huge pushback, a massive no way from the current game. So what exactly is R360 and why is it controversial? Rugby union is facing challenges on a domestic level right now. There's huge financial instability across even top-tier clubs. The English game has seen leading clubs like Wasps, London Irish and Worcester go out of business in the top flight. The Welsh provincial game is in total disarray too. R360 says they would remove what are easily some clubs' biggest expenses, i.e. the big stars, and therefore make more of them profitable. So the plan is to inject a new lease of life into the sport. But how exactly? Top stars of the men and women's game playing for a franchise-based league with fixtures in cities like London, Miami, Tokyo and Lisbon. Each city would host a tournament featuring all the franchises during a short 3-month season. And though no players have officially confirmed, reports suggest around 200 have signed pre-contracts, some worth up to 750 grand. And if that's the pre-contract, you can imagine where the full wages will get to. Problem is, the rest of rugby says no. In fact, no way. The national unions from England, Scotland, Ireland, France, Italy, South Africa, New Zealand and Australia have declared any player joining R360 will be banned from test selection. World Rugby's also not approved the league. Many fear it echoes football's failed European Super League, a top-down, money-driven idea that could damage the sport's traditions. So is it dead already? Well, rugby union is at a crossroads. Some may be against it, but we know others are being swayed by the cash. So will everything work itself out? Or after the European Super League and Live Golf, have we got sport's next big scandal on our hands?
'Halfway through Sunday edition with myself, Shaun Custis, and Henry Winter. Later in the show, we'll be talking to Ian Cathro, a well-known coach at one time in this country who's just been named Portugal's Manager of the Month. And we'll all be assessing why Thomas Tuchel needed to be given a new 2-year contract with England. But first, let's switch to rugby now. Second round of the Six Nations this weekend. Ireland just about overcome Italy 20-13, and then Scotland gave England, well, 14-man England for a lot of the time, a bit of a kicking, 31-20. We're joined now by Chris Patterson, Scotland's highest point scorer and second most capped player, and a man who I think is in the camp as well because he works with Scotland's kickers. Morning, Chris.
Good morning, Shaun. How are you doing?
Morning, Chris.
Very good. Well, it must have been pretty heartening watching that yesterday.
It was because for a number of reasons, just the level of execution, the bravery and the courage to play how Scotland played when they've been under more pressure, I assume, than they've been under for a long time. The way that Gregor set his team up, the way that he motivated his players, the way the players responded for themselves, for the coaching staff, for the country when they've been under huge heat this week was so pleasing. And you add to the fact that it's against, one of the top teams in the world. 12 wins in a row for Steve Borthwick in England. Loads of control, loads of physicality, a real clarity in what they're trying to do. So Scotland were properly up against it after week one. But to pull out a performance like that, well coached, well executed, just so accurate, oozing with courage and bravery. It was a special day at Murrayfield, it really was.
I was making the point there that England were down to 14 men for about half an hour due to Henry Arundel's indiscretions. But the fact was, Scotland were on top of England well before they went down to 14 men, weren't they?
Yeah, it was. I think it was at 17-0. I think before Henry's first yellow card, and he had a kind of busy afternoon, and then came on, scored a try, a really good try, a beautiful delayed pass from George Ford, and Henry Arundel scores underneath the post. Then it gets back to 17-10. And Scotland have been criticised for a number of things over the last few years. A kind of boom and bust, 17 points up against a 17-point comeback against New Zealand, and then letting it slip in the last few minutes. A 21-point win against Argentina, and at that point in Murrayfield, you could sense a little bit of nervousness. It got to 17-10, and then Ben White scores. Henry Arundel gets his second yellow, which there were 2 yellow cards, so it becomes a 20-minute red. There was no malice in his challenge with Kyle Steyn. He has to be more aware of where Kyle Steyn is in the air. So 20 minutes down to 14, and I was asked the question, I was in the radio commentary yesterday, I was asked the question, what does Scotland do now? Do they try and find the space that Henry Arundel's left? I said, no, they do exactly what they're doing. They're accurate. The space will find them. If they're as accurate as they are in the way they're playing, the space will find them, and they'll continue to be successful. And they were, with a huge defensive effort in the second half.
Chris, Murrayfield is a stadium you know well. I think you played your last pro match there.
Yeah.
England haven't had the best of record there in recent times. They surely knew what they were walking into in terms of the power of the support.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can remember being involved in a Scotland win in 2000, and one of the things that and that was an amazing English team at that point. It was the team that went on to win the World Cup in 2003 that they were beginning to gel there. And I remember Ian McGeechan was our coach then. He said, don't forget that there's a number of these players have never been at Murrayfield before. They've never played in this atmosphere. The situation's different. It's a unique atmosphere. It's a unique fixture, and we played in that. But yesterday, all of the English players, I assume, perhaps in Big Eye Pepper would be one that wouldn't have played at a Calcutta Cup match, but most of them had that experience. And it's one thing preparing for it, but I don't think the preparation of Scotland's any different. I don't think the preparation from England's any different. I just thought it was the accuracy of what Scotland delivered, and then the crowd fed off that. And to hear the spontaneity of the crowd singing, it really does drive the players on. But the players had already laid the platform for how they started the game. But I think England will be frustrated because they have been so consistent, they have been so good, and they went for a 6-2 bench that maybe backfired a little bit when they picked up 1 or 2 injuries in the back line. They had to reshuffle the midfield. Quality players as individuals, but maybe not in their primary positions. And as I say, Scotland were just so accurate.
Scotland have a ridiculously good record in the Calcutta Cup. 5 wins from 6, and it could have been 6 from 6, but Finn Russell's missed kick last year. Why did England struggle so much against Scotland?
I don't know. I do think Scotland are brave in the way that they approach the game. They have a real attack-minded mentality. I mean, Scotland were poor last week in Italy. It was a monsoon. It was quite unique in terms of the conditions. Couldn't play their natural game. Yesterday, the sun was out. The ball was dry. There was a real passion and accuracy around how Scotland play. England have a really aggressive, narrow blitz defence. Scotland want to play in the wide channels. So if you're good enough and you're accurate enough, you can find the space and really hurt England's defensive structure. That's what happened, especially early on with the 2 tries. One was scored in the left wing, one was scored in the right wing. You're playing plays using the full width of the pitch that the England's defence doesn't want. They want you to be narrow. They want you to take them on physically. They want to come forward with their aggression. Scotland found the space. So I think the way Scotland play, really, if you can do it accurate enough, really almost doesn't suit the way England defence, if that makes sense.
Chris, can you give us a little insight into what you've been doing at the camp with the Scotland kickers?
Since I retired for 12 or 13 years now, I work with Scottish Rugby. I work with all the kickers in our performance programme, so the men's national team, the women's national team, both Edinburgh and Glasgow professional teams. So I work with individuals on their kicking skills, whether it's goal kicking, kicking off penalties, catching, and it's always been a really important part of the game. But with the way the game's going at the moment, contestable kicking becomes an even bigger part of the game. There's some law iterations that mean that those contestable kicks become really important. I just help with the kicking skills, and the players do the rest. By the time you work with them at the national level, you've worked with them probably in under 16s, under 18s, under 20s. So the majority of the coaching gets done at a younger age, and then it's about just being a shoulder to cry on, or being there for a word of advice, a bit of wisdom by the time they get to the national setup.
Chris, talking of kicking, George Ford's decision to go for a drop goal, I think it was at 24-13.
Yes.
What was the thinking behind that?
I actually think it was, and I think the world of George Ford. I think he's an incredible player. He's had a brilliant career. I think it was a result of Scotland's defence. England's kicked a penalty, I think, 2 or 3 minutes into the second half, and then thereafter, all the pressure was in Scotland's third. England kept knocking at the door. Scotland's defence was heroic. It was organised. It was brave, and I think England turned down a penalty at goal to, I think, go to the line or have a scrum. The scrum was on top. It was really good. But Scotland's defence, I think, forced George Ford's hand. They just couldn't get any momentum, couldn't get over the gain line. Maybe there were 6 or 8 phases and thought, listen, I'm going to get a dodge. I'm going to take the 3. But Matt Fagerson was alert to it, got the charge down. So I don't think it would have been Fordy's first choice, although he has been successful in the drop goal before. But I actually think it was reward for Scotland's defence, and it was a proper 10-point swing. Obviously, it didn't get to 3. Scotland go up the other end of the field, having had 0 possession, 0 territory in that second half. And then, say, a 10-point swing, so a big turning point in the match.
Anyway, let's have a quick listen to what England coach Steve Borthwick had to say post-match.
Italy disappointed, and huge credit to the Scotland team, who I thought played really well today. And they certainly got an advantage in those loose balls that came off that aerial contest. And from those loose balls, they attacked real well. And clearly playing such a huge part of the game without a winger against a team that was moving the ball to that edge so much, that hurt us, and ultimately it gave us too much to do in the second half.
So, Chris, a wake-up call for him? Is it a blip, or is there more to worry about?
I think the Six Nations throws up some pretty special results. You can get a lot right in international games and still lose. I think having won 12 games in the bounce, it is a blip. England play Ireland at Twickenham next weekend, so there'll be a lot of pressure in that game. Ireland have stuttered a little bit in early rounds, but they'll be motivated to go to Allianz. So I'd say it's a blip for England. They may look at a couple of selection changes, maybe a slightly wider attacking game as well, if there's more space to be found against Ireland. But yeah, I wouldn't panic so far. All it does is open up this wonderful tournament of ours for the next 4 or 5 weeks, and we've no idea what will happen come the middle of March when it ends.
So if England lose next week, is it title over? We've heard a lot about, it's France v England, that's the one that's going to decide it.
Yeah, well, you would think two defeats, it'd be hard to win a title with 2 defeats, and I think with the final one being away in Paris, France obviously play Wales this afternoon. France were just on another planet last Thursday night against Ireland at home. So that round 5 fixture between France and England, will be crucial. You don't want to be going into that having already lost 2 games.
Chris Patterson, Scotland legend, thank you very much for joining us here on
Sean.
Sunday edition.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks.
You watched a bit of that yesterday then, Henry?
I did. I mean, he talks so much sense, doesn't he? I mean, it's just... And what was interesting, because it was just talking about the younger age groups that are coming through, and clearly when you've got someone like him in charge as an inspiration, because they'll all these kids will know who he is, absolute legend of the Scottish game, and be inspired by him. So, the production line continues.
It does. Next up, we'll hear more about Scotland, this time from a Scottish coach who's pulling up trees in Portugal.
Speaking on the Overlap Stick to Football podcast, and Postecoglou criticised Tottenham's transfer strategy while claiming his former side are not a big club in the wake of Thomas Frank's sacking.
When you walk into Tottenham, what you see everywhere is to dare is to do. It's everywhere. And yet their actions are almost the antithesis of that. Right. It's a real curious in terms of understanding what are they trying to build. You know, what are they? Is it? There's obviously they've built an unbelievable stadium, unbelievable training facilities. But when you look at the expenditure, particularly, you know, in their wages structure, they're not a big club. I saw that because when we were trying to sign players, we weren't in the market for those players. It's just who we are, mate.
Oh my God! To dare is to do. What do you lot do? You do nothing. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, look.
What do you do? What do you do? Do you dare?
We're in the final hour here of Sunday Edition with myself, Shaun, Custis and Henry Winter. Quite a lot of WhatsApps and texts have been rolling in, particularly on the VAR nonsense, or non-VAR nonsense at Aston Villa against Newcastle. Ryan says, Henry, you cannot impose a time limit on VAR. Imagine giving these already inept officials, say, 30 seconds to make a decision that could win or lose someone a league title. They will panic and probably make the wrong decision. Tech isn't the problem, the officials are.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, and that's very good that he's basically putting you in your place in terms of he's saying that VAR is needed.
But the officials are still a problem.
Yeah,
as we saw yesterday.
We absolutely got to improve the level of the officials. I mean, the VAR has highlighted issues with officials.
Andrew in Mid Wales says, morning Henry and Shaun, interesting discussions on VAR. As a supporter of VAR, I definitely think it interferes when it's not clear and obvious too often. The system can easily be tweaked. If VAR can't make a decision in 30 seconds once all angles available have been used, then on-field decision remains.
One thing I do have a concern about is we've got a generation of fans who are growing up not enjoying, as you would have done, being on Gallagher with Supermac or whoever you saw, that instant adrenaline rush, that pure adrenaline rush. And I think that is sad in a way, and that's something we're going to have to live with VAR, because there will always be that element of turning to the officials. Can we celebrate that goal? That is my one concern.
I do like a goal celebration.
Yeah, I know, but it can only be a 95% goal celebration because there's still that element of doubt. But look, VAR is here to stay. Do you accept that?
I wish I couldn't. I wish I didn't. Anyway, switching gears, we're heading to Portugal, where Scotsman Ian Cathro has won Manager of the Month at his club, Estoril Praia. Estoril are 8th in the Portuguese top division. Ian was previously assistant coach at Newcastle, Tottenham, and also briefly head coach at Scottish Premiership leaders Hearts. Earlier this week, Henry caught up with Ian and started by asking him about his coaching philosophy.
I approach this just being myself and helping the group of players the best way that I possibly can, which will obviously be in a certain way because I am a certain way, and maybe everyone's a little bit more skilled in certain areas or certain styles or certain concepts or whatever that is. It's more a consequence of that than preset decision. Like, it's really important that we play in a very specific way. I don't feel that way about it, and I don't look at it that way about it, but it's, I guess, no matter, I could maybe find myself with 10 different groups of players that are all got different characteristics or whatever. I don't think I'll ever be someone who spends 75 minutes on the edge of their own box to maybe see if we get a transition and score from a corner. I would struggle to be the best guy for that job. I'm not obsessed about it being the absolute flip of that either. But I think we've built a clear approach to how we play here, which was less based on playing beautifully, as was described in that, and more about playing without fear. because this club just has lived constantly with the fear of being relegated. And what I wanted to try and build was the way that we work every day and the way that we play and the way that we approach the game is completely fearless, to also try and detach from the feeling like you're playing to stay up.
But playing-wise, who do you enjoy watching?
I don't spend a whole lot of time watching other teams. I probably put a little bit more value on someone that chooses to take control. So I see somebody defending that lets the other team make 25 passes before they lay a glove on them, I'll get bored and change the channel. That makes me feel uncomfortable. And likewise, if the ball's going to the side and getting in behind them to win throw-ins and corners, then that would feel out of control for me. And again, that would completely disengage me. A level of aggressiveness against the ball that says, okay, we're not just going to allow you to do whatever you want. That could take different shapes. It could be a little bit lower or a little bit higher, but a clear intention to deal with it with a more aggressive, robust posture. And with the ball, I'm not obsessed about making 1,000 passes, not obsessed about playing forwards every single time, but that there being order to how things function, and that everybody can, the players can shut their eyes and see the same images in front of them.
Portugal's got a strong coaching culture. Do you feel you've been accepted now?
Yeah, I think that's been achieved, and that's something I'm really proud of, to be honest. But I'm genuinely proud of that, and appreciative, grateful to a certain extent as well. But also know that I've worked really hard to get to that point. So I am. I don't mind saying that I'm quite proud of myself from having been able to reach that point.
You obviously worked with coaches that we know well, like Nuno. What was his influence on you?
That was a huge influence on a football level and also a personal level. Our relationship goes right back to the point where I had the opportunity to do something that I wanted to do for a long time, which was leave home, work abroad, learn in a different way, grow a little bit and evolve in a different culture. And he helped me hugely in that period of time. And then obviously we worked together for a number of years. And at that point, at the beginning, I was someone who had lots and lots of training pitch experience as a young guy. Nuno was starting out with less of that from the coaching side, but had incredible experiences and was a natural leader in changing rooms and all these situations. So we had each other's missing piece. And I'm really lucky to have learned and absorbed a lot of his experience, as well as just kind of living and building up my own ones.
What did you learn from Rafa at Newcastle?
Someone who really enjoys talking about football and talking about different experiences and his own journey as well. A proper pro, how would you put it, maybe like a real coach's coach. 9 out of the 10 conversations you'd have with him were football ones. Small talk was limited. The thing I took from Rafa that I keep with me and pops into my mind every so often is the defensive work. He had a lot of really simple things, but detailed as well about how the team manages different situations defensively, and that was important for me at that time. Obviously I was there in a season in which we were relegated, which is a huge failure. But I still have a real deep fondness for the club. A huge respect for how people feel about football, how that place feels. And probably if I was to choose one place or one club that sort of the club itself left the biggest mark on me, it would be Newcastle. And I'm delighted that they're living a different, they're living their lives just now a different air, a different feeling, a real optimism.
We're obviously having a lot of debate over here at the moment. Is there something in the club? What is it about the culture of Tottenham? Conte made that point when he left the club. He said, there's almost like a sort of deep-rooted flaw within the club.
Not that they were lucky to have Mauricio, because they obviously identified him and they made that decision. So they done well identifying Mauricio. But I think what he brought and what he represented, it kind of became him. And we know there are certain traditions and certain feelings and the way the team should play and what a Tottenham player should look like and so on. We also know that there's a reality aspect to that, where what actually is winning. Is winning being in the top 6? Is winning always being in the Champions League? Is winning being in the Champions League 1 and 3? Or is winning actually winning? And maybe it sounds silly to say that they need to decide exactly what they are, because we're talking about a really big football club with history and with great conditions and so on. But maybe at the same time, it's still valid to say you could probably do with sitting down for a minute and just deciding exactly what you are right now, exactly what you want to be in 5 years' time, and make some difficult decisions and be really ballsy about following it through.
When are we going to see you back in the UK?
To be perfectly frank, well, the answer is I don't know, obviously, because it's not often that coaches control exactly where they are. But it's not something that I'm looking for. But I'm also aware that I don't control exactly how long I'll be here, and I don't control if someone else is interested or they get fed up of me or whatever one happens first. I don't control it.
Fascinating interview there with Ian Cathro, who's won Manager of the Month at Estoril Praia in Portugal, formerly a coach at Newcastle, at Tottenham, briefly head coach at Hearts, and he gets my vote, Henry. Newcastle, the best place he coached at, and this one must have had you choking on your cappuccino. He's not a man who likes 1,000 passes or even 25 passes. Sounds like a man who likes to get it in the mixer.
No, and the citation that he got for winning Manager of the Month in Portugal, which is actually voted for by his fellow coaches, so it's quite an accolade, is just the beauty and magic of his football.
Which is, get it up there, forward thinking, get it up there, stop messing about, gets bored. He said he actually gets bored if you start knocking around a lot of passes. You don't agree with that philosophy? You hate that philosophy?
No, I like a mix. I'm not one-dimensional like you, or root one-dimensional like you.
Anyway, I thought Mr. Cathro came across very well there, but why did you get any indication of why he ended up in Portugal when he's obviously got a fair old coaching pedigree?
Well, I guess it's the Nuno connection. He knew him from Largs, the then Scottish coaching emporium, where so many great coaches
Nuno recommended him?
Yeah, well, he worked for Nuno in 2 or 3 places, and I think Nuno asked whether he wanted to go to Nottingham Forest, but he wanted to prove himself as the head coach.
Yeah, we shall watch his progress with interest. This is Sunday Edition on talkSPORT with Shaun, Custis and Henry Winter. After the break, we'll turn our attentions to England's head coach for the next 2 years.
Alex Cook has been crowing about this for the last 24 hours because, of course, this has been his motto. He said, I felt like Tottenham was saying, we're one of the big boys, and the reality is, I don't think they are.
Well, it's interesting. If I've been saying that in an Australian accent and holding up the Europa League trophy for the past 6 months, maybe Tottenham fans might believe me a bit more, because he's their hero, isn't he? Despite the fact he finished 17th last season. And he's right. He said all the things that I've been saying. They're a big club in terms of the training ground is fantastic. The stadium is the best in the Premier League, if not the best in Europe. But they're not a big club in terms of trophies won, in terms of global fan base, when you compare them to the likes of Liverpool and Manchester United and Arsenal, especially now that Son is not there anymore, because that did open up all kinds of avenues for them. And they're not a big club in terms of the transfer fees they pay, because Dominic Solanke is still their record signing at £65 million. And they're not a big club in terms of the wages.
Well, actually, that does make them a big club in world football, because there's not many clubs that pay that sort of money for players. Most of them are
Premier League.
Here we've got half an hour left here on Sunday Edition with myself, Shaun, Custis and Henry Winter. Later on in the programme we'll be talking about today's FA Cup games, particularly feature one, Birmingham-Leeds, which is live on talkSPORT. However, now I want to talk Thomas Tuchel, who's extended his contract as England manager through to Euro 2028. German took charge in January 2025, on a deal that was scheduled to run until this summer's World Cup. And of course, the 2028 European Championship finals are being hosted by England, Wales, Scotland and the Republic of Ireland. And it's understood Tuchel views leading the side into a home Euros as a rare opportunity. For its part, the FA was keen to ensure continuity and remove speculation over Tuchel's future heading into the World Cup. So, Henry, has he been rewarded for doing nothing? Or were the FA right to tie down their man to fend off any advances?
A bit of both. I think it should go tournament to tournament. I think it should be performance related. I think, have we learnt from previous tournaments? I mean, it's quite interesting. There's a bit of a German theme to this. I mean, going into Italia 90, Bobby Robson had committed himself to PSV Eindhoven because the FA showed no interest in extending his deal. And England, even with a manager who was moving on at the end of it, got to the semi-finals, went out to West Germany. Fast forward to Euro 96. Terry Venables was given no real indication from the FA that he would be able to continue after the tournament. The FA board was very split on this. Noel White was not particularly a fan of Venables. No deal. And England got to the semi-final and went out to Germany this time. 2010, everyone's focusing on the Capello story, and are there echoes of Capello going into 2010? Early in June, the FA addressed his contract, but really all they did was take out the break clause. It wasn't, which was a big issue, because if England then didn't do very well in South Africa, which we all knew, guess who we played? The Germans. Mesut Ozil gave Gareth Barry and England and the rest of the team the runaround. The fact that he would then obviously continue because he had the safety net going to 2012. He then left in February 2012, but it really just, it was bad.
It wasn't certain he was going to stay though, Capello, because I remember straight after the game, I asked him in the big press conference about would he resign. I was told in no uncertain terms it wasn't the time to get into that. And then there was a lot of discussion between the FA bigwigs about it. And eventually, the late Phil Garside, who was on the board then, came back to us all about 3 days later, say Capello was staying on. But it was up in the air a bit. And then when Roy Hodgson was manager, we kept extending his deal, or he certainly didn't have a deal through to 2016, did he? We kept extending his deal, even though he was failing. We had the famous bit on the pitch after the last game in Brazil, whereby it looked like he was out, and then for some reason the fans were cheering him, so he went over and clapped them, and everyone thought, oh, he's still got England fan support, so he stayed on. Nothing about extending the deals before a tournament or after is an exact science, is it? You sometimes have to read the mood of the nation, maybe.
Well, I think the mood of the nation is probably that they like Thomas Tuchel. The England fans like it. The England players clearly like him. He flew through qualifying, 8 wins, no goals conceded. The issue is, and that we don't know, is whether there's a break clause. If the FA have inserted a break clause after this World Cup, depending on how far England get. And look, if England are not going to foul up there because they've got a very good coach, got a fantastic collection of footballers. But surprise, surprise, there are other good teams out there. There's France out there, there's Spain out there. The conditions, we know all the sort of, the issues sort of going into it. So and Gareth Southgate has raised the bar. Semi-final, quarter-final, and 2 finals, the latter 2 in the Euros. So I personally think it should be performance related, but then the flip side of that, I do understand why the FA have acted, because they won't have you and me and others sort of continually asking them questions. Is he staying on? Are you worried about Manchester United's interest? Tottenham Hotspur's interest? He obviously enjoys living in London. So I kind of...
break clause, if there's a break clause in it, then the extension means nothing, doesn't it, really? I mean...
it gives some security to either side. My concern about this is the risk of straying to VAR country. There is a safety net there. If England don't do well, he knows he's still got that 2 years if there isn't a break clause. And I think it should be far more performance related. The FA say there are performance conditions in it, but there are always performance conditions in it. I mean, I've seen some England managers' contract, and it's 250 grand if you get out the group stage and all that sort of element. So those are performance conditions. We need to know whether there is a break clause.
The weird thing about this is it came a bit out of left field, didn't it? Because nobody was talking about whether he'd extend. We'd all kind of assumed, well, we'll go to the World Cup, and basically, if he wins it, then he'll walk away really happy as a World Cup winner. And if he doesn't, well, off you go. It hasn't worked out. You're supposed to win the World Cup. That's why you're here.
Yeah, I mean, James Ollie from ESPN raised it in, I think, the last England press conference, saying, Thomas, you're obviously enjoying it here. Is there any chance of discussions? And he said, yes, I'm like it, but now's not the time to talk about it. And then, as you say, on the eve of the Nations League draw, and that was probably the logical time for something like this to be clarified, because it was the next tournament that England.
And the questions were going to be asked about, well, you're not even going to be involved in this.
Exactly. And we went through that with Keegan. So it made sense. And then Matt Lawton and Johnny Northcroft at the Times broke the story early in the morning, and you thought, oof, that does kind of make sense that there is some clarification on it. But I do have an issue with the, it should be cash on delivery. It should be MetLife or bust. Because what a lot of us wrote, and I'm sure you were echoing this at the time, criticism of Southgate is that he got England so far. He started England on a journey, but he didn't quite finish it. But he has raised the bar. I mean, if England go out in the quarterfinals or the semi-finals, what has Tuchel achieved?
But then you could say, has Southgate got, well, give him another go to see if he can finally win a tournament when we're virtually on home territory.
In terms of 2028? Yeah. I mean, I can understand the logic of that. And look, he enjoys living in London. He's working with a talented group of players.
But do you think he would have been entitled to go to the FA now? Maybe he did, and say, look, I got you through qualification, no hiccups whatsoever. I've shown that I'm working well with this group. I've shown I can be pretty steely when it matters. Yes, I had a bit of a hiccup over Jude Bellingham, but by and large, he hasn't really put a foot wrong, apart from losing at home in a friendly. Do you think he had enough in the bank to be able to go to them and say, I think I deserve a contract through to 2028?
I think as long as the FA weren't looking at the FIFA rankings in terms of the teams that England have played, then I think he's probably in quite a strong position. Look, everything comes down to, as it did with Southgate, against France at the World Cup, against Spain in the European Championships, and how England do against that. That is when Tuchel will be judged. You can't judge him at the moment. He's an exceptional coach, elite coach. We saw that at Chelsea, Champions League final. What he's done, he's got an exceptional group of players. England will go probably third or fourth favourites out at the tournament. So what should he be achieving?
Well, what does this all mean for the project? Of course, we built St George's Park with a view to breeding English coaches. That's the whole mantra, that by the time we get around to this, we'll just have a succession of English coaches who take over, and we'll go swimmingly on and win trophies with England managers. Now, that's blown out of the water.
Don't you think this is good news for
Good news
your
for Eddie Howe? Well, for us.
Good news for Newcastle United, because it looks like the FA won't come
break
swooping.
Clause.
Yeah, if there's a break.
No, but let's go back to St George's Park, and you're
very dismissive of St.
You're a big
George's
advocate.
Park.
Well,
Yeah,
I was
it's a coaching
dismissive of the fact that they're going to produce a load of coaches who are going to manage at the very top level in the English game.
Yeah,
and they don't.
But because of people like you, and because that you didn't back it at the time, 10 years that place stood as a wasteland. Yeah, well, you and others. Well, because you could have backed it at the time. There were people at the FA who were wavering. That place stood for 10 years as empty fields. The occasional cow would sort of graze across it. It was an absolute disgrace. If we'd acted 10 years earlier, I take your point that we don't have a succession of coaches, but that is what St George's Park is about. Okay, it's the home of England teams, I get all that, but it's a coaching hub. We need to take coaching more seriously in this country, invest in it more. So we do have a Clairefontaine, as the French do. We do have a Curviciano, like the Italians do. We take coaching more seriously, and they are beginning to do that. They do the pro license there, they have coaching ID sessions there, and we are taking it more seriously. That's why it's important that Liam Rosenior does well. That's why it's important that Frank Lampard does well.
But Gareth Southgate was in at the start of things that were going on at St George's Park. Gareth Southgate became the England manager, and despite your reservations, I felt did pretty well to where he got. So surely Gareth had proved then that this works. He was part of the system. He came through, did really, really well. So the next man should be English, because we've brought Gareth through from St George's Park onwards.
I mean, when you look at what Gareth Southgate's contributed to England and English football on the pitch, off the pitch, what he did in terms of when he was briefly director, I think it was technical development or elite development, 4 years ago, going around the counties, getting to play small-sided games, backing St George's Park so it was a coaching hub, so we could take coaching more seriously. We need a deeper pool of English coaches. So your point, which is completely right, it should be our best against your best. It would be great if the England national team had an English coach. Completely agree with that. But actually, the talent pool is shallow at the moment. That is why we've needed St George's Park, and you've got to judge. These coaches aren't created overnight.
It's not overnight. You're going back to 2013,
well,
aren't you? 2011. When did the first stakes go in the ground?
Well, because of people like you, it took 10 years. I mean, even by English building standards, it took 10 years to get going.
You should have seen Gareth's done pretty well. Next man has to be an English coach, or next woman, whatever.
Yeah, but it takes time. Who is out there?
Time?
Well, absolutely. But that's because the whole thing got delayed by 10 years by people like you who say, why are we spending £100 million?
Still had 5 years. So we still had 5 or 6 years.
You see, I never believed in rebuilding Wembley. I would have had the national stadium either go around the country or have it in the Midlands, rather than 775 million, almost £750 million. Anyway, we needed to invest in St George's Park. We should be a serious football nation, which involves a place like that. But it takes time to build coaches.
So eventually we will get a production line of English coaches.
Yeah.
Do you see it happening?
I mean,
where do you go beyond Eddie Howe?
Because younger coaches are coming through, and we need some of them not to go maybe into the television studios or the radio studios and back it even more. Concept. That's another debate. But absolutely, and we've got a generation of coaches who are coming through now who are financially wealthy and don't actually need necessarily to go into management. Plus, also, you look at the turnover in managers. They're better off going in the studio. And
anyway, the conclusion is St George's Park hasn't done what it was supposed to do. You're listening to Sunday Edition. To finish, we look ahead to today's FA Cup action and get the latest odds with William Hill.
Let's go to Alan, who's a Man City fan. Right, Al?
Yes, good evening. I've got a little song for you at the end for the Arsenal fans as well. But do you know what, Arsenal? Man City are a snake, and they've had their foot on our necks where we've been weak, and they should have cut our heads off and buried us in the sand, and they've not. And now we're going to come back and beat them, and we're going to win this title. And in a couple of weeks after we play them at the Etihad, when we give them a footballing lesson, you can ring me up and I'll come on the show again, because Man City are a better team to watch than what Arsenal are. And he's coming on. The Premier League trophy's coming back to the Etihad. And listening to these Arsenal fans tonight, we are right in there, then. All the memories of all the years previous are all coming flooding back. And we're going to win the league. And I'll give you my song now.
Go on in. Is it clean?
Crumbling again, ole, ole. Crumbling again, ole, ole. Crumbling again. Crumbling again. Crumbling again, ole, ole. Can't wait to sing that.
All right, Al. Listen, Man City fans are... if they're listening to the show tonight, Man City fans, I think they'll be thinking...
Do you know what it does do, though?
Tell you what.
It gives us... We have got a proper title race.
Yeah.
A proper title race. It's not a bad point for Arsenal. I still don't think Man City are quite the Man City that we've seen win a title.
No, but
they could do. They could.
Yeah, following us here on Sunday edition, it'll be Birmingham Leeds, live action in the FA Cup, 12 o'clock kickoff, show starts at 11. Jim Proudfoot will be a commentator for that, and he'll be joined by Dean Ashton. Morning, Dean.
Good morning.
Morning, Dean. Dean, how do you see this one going?
Well, I think it's arguably the pick of the round. I think with these two clubs very much on the up, obviously with the background here at Birmingham City and all the grand plans that they hope to achieve in the coming years. I think looking at games like this to kind of showcase where the club are at, I think is huge for them. And as for Leeds, obviously they've turned a massive corner and will always want to do well in the FA Cup.
Dean, we always have this debate about FA Cup team selections, particularly two teams like this, Birmingham 10th in the Championship, Leeds United, obviously, because of that half-time tweak at Manchester City by Daniel Farke, moving away from the relegation threat. Where do you feel they are in terms of their view of the FA Cup?
I think if you're Birmingham City, I think you take it seriously and you give the respect to the supporters that turn up week in, week out to recognise that this is a huge game. You are at home. We're not right at the back end of the season as such as well. So I would be putting a very, very strong team out if I was the Birmingham City manager. As for Leeds, as I saw when I did the game against Nottingham Forest, and you look at their bench, they have got some depth now. So actually, they can make a couple of changes, and I don't think necessarily weaken the side. So even if there are changes for Leeds, don't be thinking, oh, well, that has really weakened them. Actually, I think there's quite a few players there that are ready for some minutes and an opportunity to show the manager that maybe they should be picked in the Premier League.
Dean, we look forward to it. Dean Ashton will be on comms on talkSPORT for Birmingham v Leeds. 12 o'clock kickoff. Game day starts at 11. Right, now let's look at the latest odds ahead of today's action with William Hill.
In the Zone on talkSPORT. Brought to you by Final One Standing from William Hill. 18 plus gambleaware.org. Terms and conditions apply.
And we're joined by our old friend Lee Phelps of William Hill. Morning, Lee.
Morning, chaps. How you doing? Enjoying the show?
Thank you. Yes, we are, and I'm glad you are too. Before we get into the action today, Spurs and Forest, relegation odds, now that they've got new managers.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are talking about Igor Tudor earlier on. I mean, he's got a bit of, there's a bit of history there in saving clubs. He came into Udinese twice and saved them from relegation twice. Brought in late at Hajduk Split to get them into Europe, which he did, and he won a cup. So he's got some kind of track record of coming into clubs late, but he doesn't know the Premier League, does he? And I thought it was an interesting appointment. Spurs were 11-2 to be relegated, which they were 9-2. This is the V's slightly in the betting. I mean, that's the shortest price. I did a bit of digging and I found they were around 6-1 back in 2008. When obviously they didn't get a point until October, didn't get a win till October, did they? When Harry came in, this is probably about the shortest they've been since 2008. Spurs, Forest are 9-4 with Vitor Pereira. Obviously knows the Premier League. Kept Wolves in the division, didn't they? So they're 9-4. West Ham 4-5, odds on to go down, but obviously recovering recently. Burnley 1-80 and Wolves 1-500. So they're pretty much down from a betting point of view. Leeds 10-1, by the way, on 30 points. So yeah, it's going to be a fascinating run-in. I mean, it's you need to know the league, don't you, to be able to kind of get into a dogfight at this stage of the season.
Lee, what are we looking at in terms of Tottenham long-term permanent?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the favourite is the man you'd expect, Pochettino. I mean, that's who all Spurs fans want, isn't it? That so and the rest are all kind of like a series of names that you would chuck around. But Pochettino's a favourite. Whether he takes the job or not, is. I mean, I don't know what you guys think. Do you think he'd come back? I mean, managers often don't want to come back.
I think he'd love to.
Yes, but he's got to be very sensitive about it at the moment.
Yeah, but USA aren't going to win the World Cup, will they? And they'll be.
Yeah. So this is just a stopgap until he becomes available and then gets the job. I mean, we saw with Pereira at Forest that he was a short price favourite from the moment Sean Dyche went, and so it proved 1-3, 1-4. Then the market was suspended, and I expect Poch will just become shorter as time goes on before the end of the World Cup.
I'm sure you're right. Very exciting in Scotland, the SPL title race. We've got Rangers v Hearts today and Kilmarnock v Celtic.
Yeah, unbelievable. The William Hill Scottish Premiership. I mean, we're a title sponsor, and what a season to be title sponsor of this division. Hearts on 57 points for anyone who's not keeping up with this one, and you really should, because it's fascinating. Rangers on 52. Celtic on 51. They all play today. Rangers hosting Hearts at Ibrox. They're odds on to beat Hearts here. 12-5 the draw. 27-10 Hearts to win the match. And Celtic are at Kilmarnock, who are second bottom. So Celtic 4-11. I guess at this stage of the title race, Hearts will be happy with a draw at Ibrox. They've barely been favourites all season, despite the fact that they're leading the division by 5 points. Celtic are favourites to win the title at 6-5. Hearts are 15-8, and Rangers are 5-2, and they could move to within 2 points of Hearts at the top today with a win. So yeah, fascinating.
Lee, you might have the extraordinary occurrence of Celtic fans actually wanting Rangers to win today.
Yes. Yeah, there's been a lot of these questions recently, hasn't there? Over kind of Spurs fans, wanting different team, not anyone to win but Arsenal, basically. And the same here. It's a strange one, isn't it?
It certainly is. Today's talkSPORT live games, we were talking about earlier, Birmingham v Leeds. That's the one that starts us at midday. How are you seeing that, given that it's very difficult to predict what teams they're going to put out? Yeah, and I think that, you look at it yesterday, and I was on the warm-up yesterday talking about, didn't really see that many upsets. And, I guess Mansfield was staring us in the face. Once you know the team news, it becomes a different proposition. And yeah, you're right, absolutely. I mean, Birmingham, as it stands right now, 21-10, just over 2-1 to beat Premier League Leeds at home. The draw 23-10, and Leeds are 23-20. You probably, until you know the team news, you're probably better off looking at some of the price boosts around some of these games. Jay Stansfield, of course, scores goals everywhere he goes. He's 3-1. Lucas Mitchell is 5-1 to score a goal. Score the first goal in the match as well. So yeah, it's I'll probably just about go Leeds in that one, but not with too much confidence. If you look at Oxford-Sunderland, though, this is something where you think Sunderland, it might be worth a go, this, to have a crack at the FA Cup, mightn't it? Yeah, well, yeah, of course, absolutely. And this is the one where, obviously, teams who are, and you'd probably count Leeds in that bracket of teams who've got maybe bigger fish to fry. They've got to stay in the Premier League. So you'd understand why they'd weaken down. But I'd be disappointed if I was a Sunderland fan and I saw my team weakening down for a game at Oxford. Obviously their away form hasn't been anywhere near as good as their home form, Sunderland. But this is Oxford. They're 8-13, which they're a Premier League team at a team in Oxford who are, who obviously are struggling themselves at 4-1. I think 8-13 is a cracking price. Obviously, again, with all the price boosts, the likes of Wilson Isidore and the like. Look, I've got to go Sunderland now. I think 8-13 for a Premier League team away at a lower division team I think that's a cracking bet.
Arsenal, Wigan, where are we? I mean, Arsenal have obviously got a big squad. Arteta can rotate. Where are we with that?
Yeah, they're 1-20, Arsenal. Of course, two former FA Cup winning teams, of course, aren't they, as well? There's an epic boost on this one. Both the epic boosts landed yesterday, by the way. This one's 2 or more goals in the first half. Was 4-6 now, even money, so it doesn't have to be Wigan. It doesn't have to both go to Arsenal. It can be Wigan scoring. But you look back at their previous, even when they rotate, they've done really well. Obviously the last round they scored a couple. And there were goals in the first half as well. There were 4 goals scored by Arsenal. So I think that epic boost is probably the best way in. A few price boosts again. Declan Rice to assist a goal at 9-4. Gabriel Martinelli to score the first goal, 6-1 as well. The other game that I'm looking forward to, I'm a Grimsby fan. Grimsby Wolves. Obviously, we've had a bit of a run in the League Cup this season, beating Manchester United back in the dark days for Manchester United. It seems a lifetime ago when they beat Man United at Blundell Park, but the 5-1 to beat Wolves today. And there's been an upturn in form recently for Grimsby. And Andy Cook is fast becoming, former Bradford player, fast becoming a bit of a hero at Grimsby. Andy Cook to score at any time in the game is 9-2, boosted from 100 to 30. That's in the 90 minutes, all those price boosts. So yeah, I'll be watching that one. 5-1 at home. I quite like it against Wolves.
Absolutely. Grimsby Wolves is live on talkSPORT 2 as well. Lee Phelps, thank you very much. That was the latest odds brought to you by Final One Standing from William Hill. Terms and conditions apply. 18+, gambleaware.org.
In the Zone on talkSPORT. Brought to you by Final One Standing from William Hill. 18+, gambleaware.org. Terms and conditions apply.
Quick one, Henry. Are you expecting any big shocks today? And what indeed would be a big shock?
Well, Grimsby Wolves. I don't think that necessarily be a shock.
Given Grimsby's pedigree in cup competitions.
I mean, Rob Edwards will go for it with Wolves, but I fancy maybe Grimsby.
You think if you're a Wolves manager, you think, I wonder if we could perhaps win the FA Cup and get relegated.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Amazing.
Well, no, the second bit.
Well,
Wigan did it, didn't they?
Well, yeah, but they were trying not to be relegated as well. Wolves have already had it. Anyway, that's it. Look forward to the FA Cup action today. And up next, it is FA Cup game day. Birmingham v Leeds.
Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson.
We've now had another resignation from number 10. The plot is thickening, the noose is tightening.
His failings are internal. He's useless, incompetent, has no political judgment.